All right, having a quorum, Eunice, help me. Speaking as substitute teacher here, I don't remember when we need votes. Do we need a vote to call to order?
Yes.
Okay, can I have a move to call the meeting to order?
I will move that.
Right, second?
I'll second.
Second.
Super.
Second.
We are officially started the meeting. First item would be approving the agenda, which is our usual agenda. Can we get a motion on that as well?
I'll move that as well.
Second, Sebastian.
Excellent. All right. We have Eunice has sent around last month's minutes. So does anyone need a minute to read them over? And when we do, we'll take them. I would take a motion to approve the minutes. I read them. They looked fine to me. Anybody?
I move to approve minutes, Sebastian.
Thank you. Thank you, Sue. Do I hear a second on approving last month's minutes?
Second.
Awesome. All right. Next item on the agenda is the chair's report. I do not have a chair's report, so we're going to move right along to the director's report where all the good stuff is.
Oh, well, I don't know if it's good stuff, but thank you. Glad to be here and see everybody. I'm a little envious of Mickey being in the 60-degree weather, but so we had forwarded the Self Advocates annual report, which is required from what I understand. Hopefully everybody received it. I wanted to briefly go over the report and, specific to the West region. So in the West region, we're very fortunate. We do have 4 self-advocates. We have 2 that are bilingual, so we're fortunate with that. They're doing a lot of work with Connecticut Family Support Network. We have one advocate in particular that has been pairing up with them to do a lot of workshops and presentations with families and any other interested party. Actually, I'm surprised Adriana with CT Family Support Network isn't with us because normally she joins us, but they're also very active in doing the AT&Me sessions where, if you're not familiar, where they get they're basically a laptop bag and it has all kinds of devices in there, an iPad, I believe there's a phone in there, and they do training with individuals and their support staff or family on how to use that. So our region has been very active in that. Sometimes we have trouble getting the word out. We go from having big sessions to little sessions. So we're trying to figure out how to better market that so people can take full advantage of it. We have a lot of involvement in healthy relationships, which is coordinated through Planned Parenthood. One of our SACs, Natasha Coles, is very involved in doing that training. They've also been very involved, although I did notice when I was reviewing the report, I don't know if anybody else picked up on it, the number of participants they've had in the self-advocate groups throughout the state. It looks like it's dropped about 600 people from 2023 to 24. So they do a lot of partnering with agencies on that, where they work with the agencies to have self-advocate groups and trying to promote then individuals within the group to become leaders. So I'm very proud of our self-advocates. They do a wonderful job. They've come a long way from when I first remember them coming on board. I'm very pleased with especially the West region. We've made some administrative changes where they used to report in one division, but now they're in each area. We have an advocate that is assigned to our clinical division. We have an advocate that is assigned to our private providers, to our IFS, and to our self-determination area. So, and they now report to staff that report directly to me. So it's really been a great working relationship. And the two of our advocates, Josie Torres and Jeremy Powell, have been with us quite a while. I don't know if anybody has any questions about what they do and what their roles are or need additional information.
No, the only thing is, as you pointed out, I'm at that graph where the total number of participants from 22 to 23 went from 1,300 to 3,300 and then slid back a little bit. How did
Yeah,
that?
I don't really know. That is a good question because if you look at the data, I mean, it definitely spiked in 23 where it went way up high and then it
Crazy, huh?
slid back a little bit. Yeah, I don't know.
Hmm.
Actually, I'm going to ask them that question, what their theory is on what happened. Is it that we marketed it better and they were able to get out there more? I don't know. I mean, some of it maybe you
Well,
could attribute to COVID, but not really, because if
well,
you
it
go
was
the
post,
years
I guess
prior,
that was sort of a post-COVID year because things were sort of choppy during the COVID years. But still, it's a remarkable increase. And then, to see, I mean, if you draw a through line, the way the thing was going, to be where we are now would be, a nice growth. But
yeah.
with that blip, it seems a little weird. But
Well, you know how data goes sometimes,
well, it depends on when things were registered. I have a feeling some things might have been registered in 23 that deserve to be in 22. Maybe, or maybe not, but I don't know when they count them, is what I'm saying. I don't know when.
I'll dig a little deeper and talk about that
Yeah,
at
let's look at that.
next meeting. So
So
Eunice, if
question,
you can make a
Shannon?
note of that. Yeah, sure.
Oh, so on Mickey's point, I was going to say, I wonder if there's a difference in, to your point about post-COVID, appetites for in-person meetings versus Zoom meetings and people's wishes to go in both either direction is sort of an interesting thought. But the actual question I had was on the presentation they did, and one of the items in their flyer that talked about don't use my name was I think top line was saying, let's just use our people's names to give them the dignity.
Mhm.
And I struggle with that. Not that one shouldn't just use a person's name, but sometimes you still need a plural to talk about the group, the broader population that we are all interested in. And so, it went from clients to something else to individuals to, and like if you can't use a plural word, how do you even have some conversations when we're talking about broader groups? What are your thoughts on that, Shannon?
Well, I tend to use either the name or individuals. Is that proper? I don't know, but I feel most comfortable with that. When I first started even going before clients, it was residents. So we've come a long way. I know sometimes I've heard the word, folks. I don't know how people feel about that, but it might be worth at some point if we want to have the group come and do that presentation and, pick their brains. They're a great group of individuals. I love working with them.
Yeah, I wouldn't
So
mind that. And,
something to,
it's sort of like when everybody decided that the word, retardation was no longer okay, we shifted away from one word to a different word or phrase. But here, and I totally agree with you, you're talking about one person using their name instead of sort of sort of like in a PPT meeting where they call the parents mom and dad. I'm like, really? But how do you, but still there's lots of conversations that are saying, oh, the individuals in this program are blah 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 blah, or what are we going to do about the individuals who don't have day programs? You still need a plural word, but their top line was don't use the word individual. So I'm like, well, okay, what would you like instead?
Yeah, just one point at the Kennedy Center, they tend to use pretty consistently the word consumers.
That was in there as well along the way. Yeah, consumer, because we're a
and then
consumer of a service, but then that turned into the don't say consumer, say individual. I'm like, okay with that too, but
Yeah.
and participants was another word as well. Yeah, interesting. But yeah, I can certainly invite them. I can coordinate that with Charles to see, which meeting he'd like them to come to. I did want to mention GTI. We continue to have our frequent meetings with them. There was one today. There's usually at least 2 or 3 meetings a week. We have Deloitte that we've consulted with, which I think I might have brought up before, that is working with DDS and with GTI to address some of the concerns and some of the policy issues. In addition, there's been some leadership changes at GTI, so we'll see what happens with that. Joe Cavallo actually offered to come back. He had attended one of our meetings and one of his sole function. Jordan brought him back to do a lot of work with GTI. He just recently presented, I think it was last night at the North RAC meeting, and he had already been here, so he's going to go to a South meeting, but he would like to come back just to touch base with this group to see, what you're hearing, what your thoughts are. So I don't know if anybody has any feedback on how things have been going. Have you heard from other families, or if you have a budget yourself?
No, for myself, and actually at the meeting, Joe was there. I presented that, I had been ongoing issues with getting our situation fixed where I was being paid mileage, and that caused a lot of confusion and going through multiple levels of people that were giving me the correct information that wasn't. That has now thankfully been resolved. Finally
Okay.
got through. Joe did get involved in some of those emails and through our case management until just a couple of weeks ago. I started to get text messages saying I didn't take the training, therefore after a certain date, I could no longer work nor be paid. So I just sent that over to the case manager, and it went right up, and Joe spearheaded a email, and they did get it straight away. So
Yeah,
thankfully that issue was there.
we're lucky to have him, and that being his
Yeah.
dedicated job right now anyways. So he's resolved a couple dilemmas that we've had that have created some issues with individual support. So I'm thankful for that. That's been a big help. I did send out the DDS legislative email. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it. It just came out today, just looking at the proposed legislation. I haven't myself gone through everything. I had just gotten that link, so I don't know if you had a chance to look at it. I really haven't, so I don't know if there's any questions.
This is Sebastian. I did get the link, but when I went to the link, it was saying something about that it's loading, that there was a typed in message about that they're loading the legislation into it. And so I wasn't really able to see anything.
Okay.
Yeah,
You know,
it didn't boot up on I just did it before I called in, and it came up with a 504 error or one of those things. So maybe it's not I'll try it again right now. Let me see.
Well,
Yeah,
I got
that
error.
I was able to
got
get
that
into
error
it.
Oh,
the
no, here
first
it is.
time,
It
yeah.
came
It
up.
was slow loading, but I was able to get into it. And then you have to
So it
click,
came up this
scroll
time.
down to DDS to click through, and then there's a big hunk of long document.
Yeah, no, I got it. It came through this time.
yeah, I had that problem too. I initially, when I sent it to Eunice, I was able to get in, and then I tested it, what she sent to this group, and twice I wasn't able to get in. The third time I was able. So I don't know if it's a timing or the amount of people trying to get in. I don't know. But so you're able now to get in,
I
Mickey?
can see it. It's right in front of me right now.
Okay, all right.
So-
So, go ahead.
Yeah, I just haven't had a chance to look at it, so I can't really respond at this point. I know from my meetings with some of the folks from the ARC Connecticut that they're anticipating a pretty tough legislative session here because there's a lot of concern, as I mentioned earlier, about the potential of block grants and what's going to happen and how the money's going to flow and all that kind of good stuff. So I know nothing's happened in that regard yet, but sometime during our fiscal year, we may see that. The whole world of healthcare is going to be potentially affected by some of the new things that the Trump administration are going to bring in. So just something we need to watch, and not much we as a state organization can do about it. We're kind of you know, the federal government decides to change the way they do stuff, there's not much we can do about it. But need to be aware of the potential problem.
I just wanted to give an update on our West Region emergency list. Those are the folks that have been deemed an emergency by the West Region Placement Resource Allocation, aka PrEP team. We currently have 24 on our list, which is a large number, but we've been at a much higher level at other points in time. And again, it's individuals that we agreed that we would fund. You know, the issue is now finding an appropriate placement. And usually those folks on that list are challenging either behaviorally or medically in terms of finding a placement for them. So we're struggling through that. On the tail of that, we had a meeting today with the Connecticut Hospital Association that all 3 regional directors joined, in addition to DCF, DEMIS, and all the contact people at the hospitals throughout the state of Connecticut. There was a lot of concern from the social workers and the behavioral health managers regarding our ability to get people out when they're ready to be discharged. Right now, I'm fortunate. I don't have anybody stuck in a hospital. It's a weekly question I ask my staff: who's in a hospital, who's stuck, who do we need to come up with a plan for? I'm fortunate that I have an assistant regional director who's pretty assertive and aggressive with the providers in terms of getting people out and getting them placed, but sometimes it's just difficult. Providers are not either wanting to take individuals that maybe came from a home setting or another setting, or providers that don't want to take individuals back that they were providing supports for because of level of difficulty, safety issues, and staffing continues to be one of the major issues that Mickey and I were talking about before everybody got on the call. We continue to struggle. And I don't know what the answer is. It's just been really, really tough. Certain pockets more so than others. And it's a balance.
One answer is that, you know, we need to advocate to be able to raise wages to a point where people can actually live on what they're getting paid. And that's not going to, you know, I mean, that's something that's, I know the RAC advocates for, and but we have these legislative guardrails that are kind of squeezing us into where we are versus any significant increases in that. I don't have a solution.
Yeah, it's tough.
But so correct, like that is the thing that is blocking the dam, essentially, that everything else, including the day program troubles, also opens up if you could pay people fairly and they weren't competing for, you know, the same labor force. So I don't know how to get around. I know that officially, I guess, it's not DDS's place to challenge the governor's budget, but as families and other family groups, that seems like the first thing we should like if that got fixed, a whole bunch of other good stuff flows from that.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously there are pressures in other areas too, where the same level of pay is being distributed, where, you know, nursing homes or childcare, you know, it's just, there's just so many stresses on the system. And obviously if you paid people $40 an hour, you know, you would get career changes, but for what we're able to do, and competing with private sector companies, Costco, Starbucks, Amazon, you know, that pay more. It's a problem. It's a national problem. I think it's more severe in Connecticut because of the high costs of living in Connecticut. And so all we can do, as you point out, Maureen, is continue to advocate with whatever voice we might have to try to encourage the state to free up capital to fund agencies so they could pay their employees more, you know. I mean, that's what it's got to be.
Even within our public sector, where the wages are higher and the benefits are stronger, they're struggling. The vacancies are in
Yeah,
just as many, and I really don't know what that's about. It seems, obviously since COVID, but we're struggling all the way around. I know in the public programs, people are on double and triple mandations, which isn't safe for anybody, concerning.
right.
Because how can you be effective when you're going into your triple shift of overtime?
And they've got higher wages and benefits, as you
Correct.
pointed out, compared to the private side. So that's rough.
Yes,
Yep.
it is.
So
So
sort of on an unintended consequences side, just another thing to watch for is if the no tax on tips thing, suggestion that was sort of a campaign issue, comes to pass. I saw one financial analyst who happens to have a child with a disability talking about that and saying, you've got a whole cadre of restaurant workers who suddenly get essentially a big raise. And that doesn't, on one hand, people can love that idea. On the other hand, you are now then competing in the same market for the people like our caregivers. And she was saying, wait, my daughter's caregiver is now a disadvantage against all of the wait staff. So there's a ripple effect where you've got a market distortion created by that, and maybe makes the workforce even more challenged. So just something to think about if that comes to pass.
Yeah, no, that will not be helpful to the people who work in our field.
Right.
I mean, I hate to keep beating it up, and it gets very frustrating. I mean, I think I gave my immigration speech 3 or 4 years ago, where we started demagoguing immigrants, and yet a large portion of people who work, not so much in the world of disabilities, but certainly in childcare and in nursing homes, caregiving on that level are, first generation immigrants. And if we're demagoguing them and shutting them down from the opportunity to be visible and working in our fields, that further inhibits the supply of work, people who want to work in our industries. So I don't want to get depressed. I keep, I think about this stuff because, I mean, I'm blessed personally that Jen is in a group home that seems to be well-staffed. She has a lot of needs, but, they do a good job taking care of her and the other residents. But I know STARS and agency is stressed out. And as Shannon said, we have vacancies, but we can't fill them because we don't have the staff to provide the supports that a person needs coming into the system. So it's a conundrum, and it's not good. And I think the country and the politicians have to wake up to the fact that this isn't going to get any better as people who were born from 1946 after the war to 1960 or so, where there was a bulge in the population, are going to need care as elderly adults. So it's not a problem that's going to go away.
So needless to say, to tail end on that and close the Connecticut Hospital Association, they're very concerned that people are staying in the hospital and they shouldn't be there. They've
Right.
been ready to be discharged for months and we can't get them out.
Right,
And having somebody sitting in an ER or in a hospital room and then they can't bill for it. That's another whole issue that they brought up. So,
right. So hospitals have to eat it, and
mhm.
or Medicaid or whatever is still paying for it, which is a lot more expensive than a venue that we could provide for a person. Yeah, it's a lot of broken things. So
But I do have some good news.
good. Let's hear it. I'll shut up because I don't even want to hear the things I'm saying.
And I've brought up this before and we were working on it. And it's really, we're getting to the end run here with our supported housing program that, supports a certain population. And that's another concern. Some families have concerns about that. We're able to do the supported housing developments, and not everybody can live in that type of setting because you have to have some independent living skills. But they started the one in Cheshire. Southington ARC will be the service provider there. So that's going up. That is on Route 10 in Cheshire. We have Naugatuck, which I talked about, they started to knock the building down, and where they're going to put the new development. We're going to get 12 units there, and then it looks like we're going to have a phase 2 on that. There's going to be another development right near, like pretty much side by side, with another 12 units. So that's exciting, and it's in a great location. We also are in the process of, we're waiting for approval from the Department of Housing at looking at one in the Fairfield County, which has been a big concern for families that way. Comes up at many of Jordan's forums. So we're excited about that and hoping that that will be approved. We should know relatively shortly. The deadline is Friday, where they had to get everything in.
What
So I'm
town is
hoping
that?
it is in Fairfield.
In Fairfield?
Yep, and the street location, I'm not that familiar with Fairfield, but I did go down there twice to check out the location. High Street.
Okay.
The only with that particular development, it's really not, and folks are going to need individuals, Marina, are going to need transportation to get to the central location where the stores and restaurants are. It's not like within walking distance, and even to use local transportation, you could, but they're gonna need support from the agency to get them to where they need to go. But my thought was something's better than nothing, and we waited so long to try to get something going in the Fairfield County, so I'm pretty excited about it. Those are the 3 exciting developments that are hopefully coming our way very soon. It looks like
Shannon, do you have one going in New Haven as well?
I
I was
don't have
thinking-
New Haven. That's not in our region, so I don't
That's
know.
why,
I know
okay.
the North region has quite a few that they've been working on. And I'm not sure. That's quite possible. I know they just recently opened them one in Orange, which is the same developer that's looking to do the Fairfield property. So, and Orange is in the South region. So,
Right.
so I'm very
Do you know
excited
when the
about that.
Cheshire one will be opening? Do you know when Cheshire will be opening?
I think they were looking in the end of 25. I did drive by that the other day, and the buildings were up. Ben Tripp is doing that development with Southington ARC. We did have one initial meeting with, there were a couple families that were interested. So we did meet with the families. We met with Southington ARC, and then Ben gave an update on, at that point, they were just getting zoning approval and approval from the town, but it's moving forward, and that's in a great location because they're going to be building that area up. So I'm excited about that. I don't have an exact month, Susan, but it looks like it's going to be towards the end of the year or the beginning of 26. And then the Naugatuck first phase for Penrose is the developer there, and ISIS, We Do Life Together, will be the agency. That is going to be in 2026. So
Cool.
with any development, you don't know, you know what I mean? So it's kind of, we just stay on it and monitor the timeframes. I ask for periodic development updates from the property developer. And I think that's it. We're just waiting for the governor's budget to be released. I don't know if you have any questions for me or any concerns, questions. Okay.
I'll just bring up, and maybe you put you in a funny spot, but the Southbury thing, I think there are 95 people that are living there.
Yes,
Ladies?
so not uncomfortable at all. We, as you know, Nikki, you're on the
Consent committee.
party. Yep, yep. So Linkfield Drive was the home that we the Build It and They Shall Come home that we worked a long time on getting open. It did open right shortly before Christmas. Two of the guys moved in. We're waiting for the other two individuals to move in. There's slow transition. So we're working on that. And then there'll be two additional vacancies there. So I'm hopeful once they have the four in there and families from Southbury can, see how good it is. We'll be encouraged to move folks along. I know Jordan did have a meeting with the director of the training school and Melanie Miller, the parties person, with the Home and School Foundation, I believe, on the 13th. I always get them and the foundation, Southbury Training School Foundation mixed up, but it was the Home and School to talk about the different options.
Right.
I did not go to that meeting, but Jordan did tell me that he thought it went relatively well, given he didn't expect that people were going to be jumping to go in the community, but at least it provided some education. So after the two guys from Southbury move in, they'll be at 99 is my understanding. They recently did have a death. One of the individuals that has been there, I guess they're saying 80 years. He passed away at 97.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, yeah. So,
And it's a teenager, young teenager, yeah.
yeah. So we continue to, if there's an interest, I did find the Build It and They Shall Come home a bit difficult to work on. Mickey, as you know, some of the struggles around that and the finding a provider. And then, so we built the house, DSS paid to develop the house with Sill, and then individuals moved in. So it was like they could come and tour the home and make a decision. Versus the house being, we have a group and then developing, and putting that out for bid or
No,
having a provider select it.
concept is, I think, a worthwhile one. You could always, it's process. It's all a process. I get that.
The initial intent with that house, they were supposed to develop a house and it was supposed to be moving forward. That was the template. So any family that was interested, they could go look at the house, because what we hear from families quite a bit is, well, how do you expect me to make a decision when I haven't seen the house yet? So if we built a basic house that was going to be duplicated, but it didn't work out that way, because at that point the property skyrocketed and they had trouble finding a house, and the house that they found was a very unique house, to say the least. Marble pillars and custom kitchen, and everything needed to be renovated to meet the needs of the folks. So it's not something that could really be duplicated. It was a huge house on, I want to say 2 acres of land. But so the initial intent was not what happened, but if it got people out, that's what we were really trying to accomplish.
Yep.
I have a question about Southbury. Could you tell us a little more about the residents that are still living there? Do any of them have trachs or vents?
I don't know if anybody has trachs, but Susan, at one of the meetings you had brought up trachs, and then there was some issues in the region around trachs, and I learned a whole lot about a trach, versus the different types of trachs. Right now, DDS is doing some policy work on artificial airway and deep suctioning, because at
Right.
one point it was only that a nurse could do that, an RN, or I know we have a particular home, Susan, that you're familiar with, where there are LPNs that did that, are doing that. So we're revising the policy now. So it's going to be a little bit easier for individuals with a trach to live in the community. I know there's quite a few individuals at the hospital for special care and a lot of young individuals coming up through the system that have trachs that traditionally, that wasn't the case. So our deputy commissioner has been instrumental in trying to push this forward and having DDS be a little bit more, that people don't have to live in a hospital, that we can care for them in a group home. And how are we going to do that? So there's a lot of work being done on that now, and I really attribute it to the advocacy from a few parents, and Elisa Velardo has been really good about moving this forward.
Yeah, I would love to see some movement on that. I could be mistaken, but to the best of our knowledge, there's only the 2 individuals in the home that I know who have trachs, who aren't in nursing homes or hospital for special care, that there's only 2 in the whole state. It's those 2 individuals.
We recently found another person that was, and actually it was another West Region person that we were unaware of because it was an ICF, and our involvement in ICF is a little bit limited. So we did find another person. But primarily the issue rose in this region for the home that, like you said, you and I are both aware of. But we definitely made some headway. Our Director of Health Services now is on the committee that is looking at the policy revision and was instrumental in working through some of the issues that came our way. And I was quite surprised when I learned that it was only the West Region that had individuals, and then I was aware that Special Care Hospital had several people.
Sue, what do you mean by you'd like to see some movement on this exactly? Are you just talking about having more spots in other houses
More
for
spots, yeah.
people with trachs, so they're
Well,
not
I mean,
only
for those who don't know, I mean, Marina knows, one of my sons has a trach, and he's one of these 2 individuals that we're talking about who is in the community, in an ICF home. But all the rest, and there's one housemate, one of the other housemates has a trach. But the persons with trachs are stuck in nursing homes or hospital for special care. And some of you know what I think of the care that Patrick got there, or lack thereof. And I'm friendly with a woman, for example, whose daughter is at HSC with a trach. She wants the kid to get out, and there's no place to put her because nobody wants to take trachs.
Yeah.
So they're all in nursing homes or hospital for special care. That's why I was just curious if anybody at Southbury even had one, because back when we were doing all the advocacy work at the Capitol, trying to get, more spots for any individuals, not just trached people, but group home placements. And all we kept hearing about, we can't close Southbury. They're so medically fragile. They just can't leave. And personally, I know there's a consent decree and all that, but personally, it really bothered me to think that people were using that when it didn't really even seem to be true, about how medically fragile they were and they couldn't possibly leave there. But anyway, so that's why I was curious if anybody even had a trach or a vent there or what was going on.
The only information that I could suggest on that is at the parties meetings, there's anywhere from 3 to 5 people that are usually in a situation where they're not determined to be able to benefit from living in the community. And then the balance have been determined that there's no barrier to their ability to live in the community. And I think in those cases, there are people who might at the time be in hospice care or really at the end of life kind of thing. So that's all I know about it. It's not like everybody there needs such a tremendous amount of support. There are still some people there that are very much like the people that you see in the community, and it's just,
Oh, yeah.
that's
I
what
mean,
they
I
are.
see photographs online of events at Southbury and seeing some of the residents there, and I'm thinking, crap, I wish my kids could be that high functioning.
Yeah, and then the question is, why are they there? So
I
that's
will say
Okay.
the home that Susan mentioned, our Director of Health Services has spent some time there and was very impressed and Susan, please feel free to jump in with the nursing care that is there and the respiratory therapist that this agency uses. She was very impressed with the care and how well they took care of the folks. And in terms of hospitalizations, we're not seeing that. So it's clearly possible. But
Yeah.
initially it was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh
And he's
boy.
gotten, I mean, I'm just going to call a spade because I can say what I want. But I mean, his care is 10 times better than what he got at Hospital for Special Care, where he wasn't even clean, let alone being well cared for. And yet, the Hospital for Special Care was getting like 3 times the amount to do it, the amount of money. It's just not right what's going on.
Now, was when your son was at the hospital for special care, did they take him into the community at all or strictly isolated to the hospital?
He was not only isolated to the hospital, he was isolated in his room except for 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
He was in the step-down respiratory unit. And he was only there for 7 months because as soon as he got in, I started fighting to get him back out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I know it's not just him because even today I just talked to another parent, one of Patrick's housemates, when I was visiting his house today. One of the housemates had lived at Hospital for Special Care, and the mother happened to be visiting, and I was asking her same thing, and that was a different step-down unit in that hospital, not the respiratory one. The care was abysmal. It's really sad.
And
But,
and the
yeah.
concern is that there's more children there that have trachs than had been in the past. So they're going to age out to DDS and what's going to happen. So we're trying to get ahead of it. And like I said, Elisa our deputy commissioner has been working diligently to try to move this forward.
Yeah, I know that right now it is, one of the things that DDS is working on. I feel for the other families. I mean, I'm thrilled with what Patrick has, but knowing other families don't have that yet, it's very disturbing.
Yeah. So anyways, on that note, that's all I have for my report. I don't know if there's any additional questions.
Any questions for Shannon from anyone?
Now, as always, it was good information. We always give us some good information.
Oh,
Absolutely.
thank you. Thank you.
So I don't know if that's covered both new business and old business, but if anyone has any new or old business to bring up, now's the time. All right, not hearing any. Public participation. Looks like we do have a member of the public here. Welcome aboard. Do you want to say anything? I think it's
Adriana.
Adriana, right? Adriana? Maybe she got busy. All right, that is our full agenda. So any other points, any other issues, or should we make a move for adjournment?
Can I just bring up, so I will speak to Chuck about having these self-advocate coordinators, if he would be interested in having them come do a presentation. And then inviting Joe Cavallo back just to touch base, give an update on GTI, or if there's any concerns that you have
Yeah.
about GTI, we can discuss it with him.
Cool. All right, sounds good.
Okay.
Looks like Adriana is still on mute, so we'll give up on public participation, and I would, if there's no other questions or issues, we can take a move to adjourn.
I move that the meeting be adjourned. Sue Bastion.
I'll second.
All right, everybody. Hey, thanks for joining.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Marina.
see you all next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.